Hello and welcome back, and today I want to show you guys how to set up your Asustor NAS for the very first time. This is the first part in an 8-part series of videos where I'm going to help you set up your Asustor NAS, not only for general access and backups. We're going to talk about surveillance, setting this up for photos, music and video, as well as DLNA. We're going to talk about Plex, and finally right there at the end we're going to show you how to access this device remotely over the internet after you've set everything up else right for the very first time. So in our first part, we are going to talk about initialization. We're going to set this device up, install our media, put on ADM, we're going to sort out some shared folders, we're going to create some map drives, create some user accounts, and ultimately get this device ready for you. And then after that, in the other videos, we're going to show you all of the features and how to set them up. So once you've unboxed your NAS and you've got it here on the table, you're going to have to make sure you've got your storage media. I've already pre-populated this, but don't worry, I'm going to remove a drive and show you how to do it shortly. Make sure you don't have it connected to the power. Make sure your external PSU, depending on the Asustor NAS you're going to use. This is the Drive Store series from Asustor. And make sure you've got your Ethernet cable as well. But again, don't bother connecting anything to the device until you've got your drive media installed. So again, the next step's going to change depending on which NAS you have there. But in this case, I will remove the front panel. And then, depending on the number of drives that you're going to be installing, again, this is a 4-bay, you don't have to install 4 hard drives or SSDs. You can install just one if you choose. Remove one of the trays, like so. And again, on this NAS, I've already installed the storage media here. But when you receive the device, it will arrive with an empty storage tray. That storage tray does have screw holes for installing drives with the screws provided, but that's predominantly reserved for users that are going to take advantage of SSDs. Or in the case of this Asustor, this is going to be focusing, in this case, on 4 40B drives. So once you remove your tray, as you can see there on screen, it's got screws there at the base. Again, do make sure that the drive you install have got the SATA connection, that is that connection there, at the very end of the drive. If you're installing 3.5-inch media like this, you can remove these side clips like so, one by one. And once you've removed them, take your 3.5-inch hard drive and slot it directly inside. You'll know if it's hitting in properly because you'll be able to see on the side that those holes will align up. Once they're lined up, grab those side clips again and install them either side of the drive. Again, whether you're doing this with 1, 2, 3 or 4 bays, depending on your NAS from Asustor, the number of times you have to do this will change. I've already installed 3 other drives in this NAS. I just need to add this last hard drive. Place the drive in base level first until you can feel it inside each of the runners on the inside of the casing there. Then slide the drive inside. Again, don't try to force it in. You'll get to a point where the drive lever here on the tray front will leverage the drive in. If it doesn't smoothly go down, that means that the SATA connector on the hard drive has not met the interface on the inside of the device. Repeat that step as mentioned for every drive that you're going to install inside. Then, in the case of a lot of the SMB systems from Asustor, simply take the front panel and attach it there onto the front. Now the next thing we're going to be looking at is connecting it to the power and the network. In the case of this NAS, that would be this port here, which is the network port, and the power connector here at the base. So the first thing to connect is the network port there on the rear of the device. Take your Ethernet cable and remove it from the bag that it's included with. And don't throw it across the floor like so. Then get the cable out and remove the cable ties. You don't have to do that, but again, unless you're going to place this on top of your router or switch, you're going to need to untie it. Now, I mentioned routers and switches because you have to make sure that this device is connected to the same network environment as the PC, or indeed in some cases mobile, that you're going to be utilizing when setting this up and accessing it regularly. So that means if you've got PCs in your home or business environment, just make sure that the PC that you are going to be utilizing to set this up in the next stage of this video is connected to either the same switch or the same router via a cable or Wi-Fi in that home or business environment. Otherwise, you won't be able to communicate with the device, and I will show you a little bit about that in around 2 to 3 minutes. Take the Ethernet cable and connect it to the rear of your system. Again, you'll hear it click to know it's gone inside. Then take the other end and connect this to either your router or your switch. In my case, it's just slightly out of shot there, which I'll connect in just a moment. Once you've done that, you need to connect your power cable. Now make sure the power is turned off at the wall. Take the power connector there at the rear of the PSU and connect it into the base of your NAS like so. Then take the power cable that's connected to the wall socket here. Take that and install that into the PSU like so. If this is powered in, you will hear a crackle, so do make sure that the power cable connected to the wall is turned off. Once you've got everything connected like this, your NAS is now ready to boot up. So you can go ahead, power it on at the wall, and then press the button at the front of the NAS in order to begin the installation. Once you've pressed the button, it will take somewhere around 3 to 5 minutes for the system to fully boot. You'll hear it beep, and then from there you can make your way onto your PC or Mac system. I strongly recommend downloading the Asustor Control Center application available on their website that I'm going to show you in just a moment on screen, as it will help you find the NAS on the network and assist with setting up a great deal easier. But for now, let's make our way over to the laptop. Right, so to continue the setup, we have to head over to the brand's own website on a supported desktop, PC, or even mobile device. What you need to do is head over to asustor.com, and from there, go to the support section here at the top. And from there, head into the download section here. It will ask you to find your NAS on an available list of network attached storage devices, and again, given that we're going to install the desktop client software to ease installation, we don't have to be too selective about what we install. However, let's go ahead and select the NAS in question, and from here it will supply us with lots of available downloads. The one that we need to go for right now is the Control Center desktop application. This allows us to interact with the NAS using our local client computer, be it a PC, a Mac or a Linux machine, and set up the NAS for the first time, as well as interact and set up other services later. So in this case, we're going to go for the ACC Asustor Control Center for Windows, and then we click the download button here, and it will download it in the background. Now, I've already installed this application. It's very straightforward and is a simple 4 or 5 click installation. Once you've done that installation, all you need to do is open the tool. Now, Asustor's Control Center looks like this. It has a number of different services all included inside that allow you to set up your NAS in a very bespoke fashion using client management tools as well as those based in the web browser. Now, right now I can see the NAS here on screen because I've booted the device up. If you haven't already booted it up, go ahead and do so and wait around 2 to 3 minutes. Also bear in mind that in order for your NAS to be visible to your PC and this software that we're using today, you have to make sure they're sharing the same network. That is to say that they are both connected to the same router or switch, or if you want to be caveman about it, just make sure that both the NAS and the PC or Mac system you're utilizing for this setup are using the same Wi-Fi SSID or just the Wi-Fi connection. That should ensure that they're visible to one another. Also, during the Asustor Control Center setup, you will be asked to allow the software to have access to the network and home user devices. Go ahead and click yes to that, as it ensures that the devices can communicate securely and safely on your network. As you can see, the NAS has already appeared here on my local area network, giving me information about its serial number, identity, and that IP. That's its address on the network. This tool that we will be coming back to later on also allows a number of different services, such as adding mapped network drives and creating remote access to allow the NAS to be visible on your own client software, such as Mac Finder and Windows File Explorer. But for now, you can go ahead and click connect or double click that NAS and it will open up in your web browser, as I've already done here. Now, the graphical user interface here on the Asustor will guide you through the installation step by step. It will also ensure that you can download the latest software. Now, you can go ahead for one-click setup. This will go through the system and it will create a RAID installation on the hard drives or SSDs you've installed with a one disk failure redundancy. It will also set up an admin account by default, create default network identities and other settings, allowing you to set up the Asustor incredibly easy. If you're not looking for any fuss, you can go ahead and click that. But for this video, I'm going to go through the custom setup just to guide you through what a lot of those options actually are. You can also change whether you want it to be a dark, light installation depending on your environment, or a light one. For simple clarity in this video, I'm going to go for a light installation. Go ahead and click Next. From here, it will ask you to give the NAS a name. Now, you can leave it as the default name or change it depending on if you have one or more NASs or you just want to be creative. Next, you have to create an account name. Now, this is going to be the All Master Admin account. In my case, I'm going to name this account Admin, but I'm going to give it a slightly awkward admin name anyway, but you don't have to do so. Next, give it a password, which again, it will ask you to make the password as safe as possible. In my case, again, I'm going to go ahead with a password that's got both uppercase, lowercase, numerical and special characters all within the password. If they match, you shouldn't see any problems. From there, click Next. After this, it will ask you to set up automated time. Now again, you can set it up manually if you choose, or synchronize it with an NTP time server. Again, it's much better to leave this as default, as a number of the system software and services are heavily reliant on accurate timekeeping with the wider internet. Then click Next. From here, it will ask you about the device's network connectivity and its identity on the network. Now, you can create an automated identity known as a dynamic IP. Now, this can make things easier when the system updates, during firmware updates, or as devices are added to your network. It allows the system to have a much more flexible network identity. However, if you're setting up rigid backup routines, such as backing up the NAS to another NAS on the network, or setting up stuff on your local PC for backups that work via the network, it's recommended to set up a manual IP, and this will fix the NAS on a point on the network where it will never change, and always allow you to portal to a direct address on the network. The only negative downside to this is if the NAS is connected to a new IP port on the router or switch or anywhere in your environment, the NAS will still have this fixed IP that might clash with the subnetwork and gateway on your system. So for first time setting up, I recommend going for a dynamic IP. And once you start setting up backup routines with the NAS, later on setting it up as static as an IP within the network software of the Asustor, something I'll show you later on in my video where I cover backup and synchronization options. From here, it will list the available hard drives that have been connected to the NAS, and also ask you to set up a RAID level for the very first time. Sorry there. So, on the RAID configuration, it will ask you which ones you want to go for. Different RAID configurations give you different benefits in terms of data safety or a safety net even, or different performance levels. These different performance levels that you can see here on screen all have their own identity. Single, for example, is when you use only one hard drive or SSD. JBOD, or just a bunch of drives, is when you have multiple drives all existing independently of each other, all within the NAS. RAID 0 combines all of the hard drives or SSDs together into one giant storage pool area to play with, which is great for performance and sheer capacity, but lowers your safety. If one drive fails due to hardware failure, then you can lose all of your data. RAID 1 has two drives that are synchronized together with all read and write activity to and from the NAS always happening identically. The result is, if a drive dies, you have one full copy of your data at all times from 2 drives. Unfortunately, that means you only get 50% of the overall capacity of 2 drives, as you're writing the same data to 2 drives. RAID 5 is very similar to RAID 1 in that it gives you 1 drive of data protection or recovery, known as redundancy, but you can use more than 2 drives, and RAID 5 is probably one of the most common RAID configurations for 4 bays or above. It spreads the data using something known as parity, which is kind of like a blueprint, as it writes data across all 3 disks and exchanging parity with each write of data, and it gives you 1 drive of data failure protection, but you do lose 1 drive's worth of overall capacity. RAID 6 is nearly identical to RAID 5 in architecture, but it gives you 2 drives of drive failure protection. That means you can suffer up to 2 drives failing. RAID 10 is allowing you to effectively split all of the drives in the system, and they have to be in even numbers, and then data is written and wrote to paired drives and then in groups. Very similar to RAID 1, but with an element of RAID 0 where it bulks drives together and then mirrors those bulked drives side by side, hence RAID 10 being RAID 1 plus 0. For this setup, I'm going to go with a RAID 5. I've got 4 drives inside, but you may have noticed that one of the drives is different than the others. This drive at the top being a Seagate, and these are all WD. I'm going to be utilising something known as a hot spare later on, which again, I wouldn't normally recommend utilising different drives, but I'm only using the drives available to me here in the studio, and I'm later on going to show you about hot spares. But for now, we're going to go ahead and select drives 2, 3 and 4, and these are going to be in a RAID 5. So as you can see, it's allowing 7.27 terabytes of data protection, and I do have drive failure safety. It won't let you proceed unless you tick that you've understood what you're creating here and that it's going to erase all the data on those drives. But for now, let's go ahead and start the installation. It's now going to create our RAID and install the latest version of ADM. This can take different amounts of time depending on your own hardware, whether the number of drives you've got, the power of the NAS, and the strength of your upload and download on the internet when setting up the software. Let's fast forward to the completion of this installation and I'll guide you through the next steps. Now that the primary installation of the Asustor's ADM setup has finished, we can go ahead and get into the final stages of setting this device up for the first time and then moving into volumes, RAID, users, shared files, map drives and more. But before we do that, the system is going to invite you to allow and create remote access to the NAS via the internet. Everything we've done so far has been over the local area network, or the LAN. However, that doesn't mean that you can access the NAS via the internet, and maybe you want to share access to the NAS with friends, family, work colleagues and more via the internet, or you're just looking to make sure that you can have your backups running anywhere in the world. In order to do that, you're going to have to create something called an Asustor ID. An Asustor ID allows you to create an access point where when you're interacting with the NAS, it passes through a remote portal that works through Asustor, and that means all that data will be completely encrypted in transmission and allows remote access. You don't have to do that now, and I recommend strongly that you do not do it during the initial setup. It may seem easy to do it now, but it's highly recommended that you set up all of your backups and security before allowing remote access to your NAS. This step can be done later on in the settings menu, so there's no need to do it now if you don't want to. Otherwise, go ahead and create a new user by clicking next. But I'm not going to do it today because I do strongly recommend that you set up your NAS completely offline, then create remote access. Go ahead and click register later if you agree. As you can see, it's now saying it's ready to go. Click start and it will present you with the ADM screen. Now, if you see an error like this on screen, all too often that can be because of your own aggressive firewall, which is the case for me. Don't worry, this is nothing to do with the NAS, it's just to do with my own aggressive firewall. Just refresh the page as it's been going through the steps. Now go ahead and log in with the credentials you created earlier. Now again, this is the admin account, and I will be showing you how to set up sub-admin user accounts, which is recommended because the last thing you want to do is to be regularly accessing your NAS via multiple devices with the most powerful admin account of the system. Go ahead, and I'm going to click stay signed in because I've got a lot of stuff to do, but I don't recommend you click that, as it will make sure that if you leave the system idle for a bit, it logs you out, which is better for safety. Then click sign in. As you can see, it's talking to you about privacy first, which is always important, and there's going to be a few guides that you can go through for setting up the device for the first time. If you want to go through them slowly and learn a little bit more about what your Asustor NAS can do, I recommend you check them out. But I'm going to skip them here as I guide you through the installation for this system. Now, we've created the installation of ADM on this NAS. The next thing we want to look at is the storage. Go to the storage manager. And as you can see here on screen, the system has taken the 3 drives that we've assigned to the system already, and it's created that storage pool. The storage pool, which contains 3 of the available 4 drives. You can then go into the volume area, and as you can see, the system has created that storage volume living on top of the storage pool. This is really important. The storage pool is the conglomeration or the configuration of multiple hard drives in a RAID. But on top of that layer, there is another layer that is comprised of individual containers. These containers can be utilized for all of your storage, be they apps, multimedia, surveillance, virtual machines, and more. If you're going to be running multiple services which you don't want mixing up, such as one area that's going to be used for multimedia, streaming, movies, music, and more around your home, and another area for surveillance, which has got cameras and more, you might want to put those in individual volumes. And what you've got here is one giant volume, but you may wish to create multiple volumes for those different services. Each will utilize available storage that's on the system, and as you can see, I can create a new volume on that other drive if I choose. But again, it's up to you how you want it to be configured and how much data is available in volumes. Just bear in mind that it's very hard to downsize a volume without having to delete the contents. As you can see, there are other storage options here that range from if you've got connected USB drives and if you're taking advantage of iSCSI LUNs, something that's a little bit sophisticated that I am going to talk about in a future video. If you're using Seagate drives, you can see that you'll have the option of iWolf Health Management, but that is a drive we're leaving for later on as a hot spare. And in the meantime, you can see more information about the drives you've got installed very easily here, as well as conduct health checks and more within the storage manager. Now, if you want to interact with the data on the NAS and when it's within applications or more, go into the File Explorer here, and via the web browser you can go ahead and do lots of different apps and services very easily within this window. Now, it's recommended that you create a shared folder. A shared folder is a folder that will allow you to distribute data and allow access to and from multiple devices to a single shared container of storage. So as you see here, if you select this option here for a new shared folder, this shared folder that you're going to create is going to be that shared container of storage, something that will become a little bit clearer towards the end of the video. Give this shared folder a name. In my case, I'm going to call this Asustor Share. Give it a nickname if you choose. Select which volume it's on. In my case, I've only got the one volume. Give it a network recycle bin if you choose. You can encrypt the folder if you choose, which can lower performance a little bit, but will ensure that the data is encrypted in transmission. But bear in mind, it will spit out a key that needs to be downloaded, and if you lose that key, you won't be able to unencrypt the folder. Or you can disable it if you want faster performance for lower priority data that you're less worried about it being if it was stolen from the NAS. Also, you can create an invisible network drive, which means that people can only access it if they know its specific identity. If you untick this and someone scans your local area network, the drive will appear, but they'll still need to have the security credentials. From here, you can say whether users can have full read-write access, only have read access, but only admin users can edit that data, or you can assign individual rights for different users, something I'll talk about in a moment. But for now, I'm going to allow read-only access for typical users, and administrators can do anything they want. From here, assess everything you've done so far and then click Finish. And there is our shared folder, the Asustor Share. Now, shared folders will appear on the NAS, as you see here, and what you can do on any NAS folder indeed is chuck files and folders in. So in this case, if we go into some of the files and folders on this NAS, we can go ahead, grab a pile of files like so, and then we can drag and drop them into that window like this. It will then upload those files directly onto the new shared folder via the local area network. As you can see, if we refresh, we can see those files being uploaded one by one and appearing in that shared folder. And indeed, we can go ahead and preview the file via the web browser window there. There's a little bit of information as well that we can garner. Or we can create a share that allows people to access this folder if we choose, and choose whether we want them to only to be able to access it over the wireless area network, such as remote or local area network. Do we want this file to last a certain given time, or basically end access after a preset period of time, or do they have to add a password? Once you've assessed how you want it to be accessed, click OK, and there is your file, your URL that can be shared. If we open up a new tab and enter that there, your end user will be able to see the shared file just like this on screen. They can double click to download it, or they can open it in a new tab window like so. Again, you can add this level of access to an individual file or an entire folder if you choose. Ignore that seagull in the background. So there you go, I've uploaded all of those files thus far, but what else can you do with a shared folder? Well, if you don't want to interact with your NAS here on the desktop of the Asustor platform, you can interact with it here on your local PC or indeed a Mac system following similar steps. As you can see, I've already created a share to another NAS. Most NAS systems support this service, it's just different how it's done. One of the easiest ways to do this is to go back to the Control Center application from earlier, not that one, the Asustor Control Center, scan the local area network once again to make sure that it's found the NAS with its new identity and everything you've set it up, and then from there select the option here to map a network drive. Then enter the credentials you created earlier for this mapped network drive. Choose the remember password if you choose, or just click next. It will then scan the local area network to find the drive in question. This may take a varied amount of time depending on the busyness of your network. It will then ask you to select the shared folder that you want to access. In my case, the shared folder, the Asustor Share. Then give it a name. In my case, I'm going to call this the A drive, A for Asustor. You can then choose whether you want the map drive to open at the end of this installation, whether you want it to always reconnect when the NAS is always ready to go, or do you want it to save the credentials? It's up to you. Click Finish. And now we've got a shared folder on my local PC that lives on the Asustor, which is that shared folder on the NAS. From here, I can go ahead and open a file just like any file I would on my Windows PC, and allows full access with ease. Also, if I choose to, I can go ahead and upload files directly into that folder like so. So in the case here, let's take this file here of a graphics card. I can go ahead and go into the shared folder on the Asustor, right click, paste it. As we can see, I've now uploaded a paint.net image in there, so it's not a standard PNG. And then on the NAS, go back into the File Explorer. And as we can see, we go down there, and there is that graphics card file there. As we can see, it's now immediately visible from within the File Explorer on our Asustor NAS. Next, we want to create a system of who can access the data on this NAS. Head over to the Asus Controls panel here, and then from here, go away from shared folders and up to local users. This will allow you to create new users, be they family members, remote or local, and indeed business and team members. So in this case, we can go ahead and create multiple users, such as if you're going to create a sales team, we can import existing CSVs of users from an existing database or create a new user. Let's create a new user, Alan. Give Alan a password. All users will be required to have their own password. Give them an email if they choose. There's our disposable email account there. And you can either disable the ability for that user to change password, or you can have this user account have a deadline. So if it's a temporary user, you can have that account expire after a certain period of time. Click Next when you're happy with those settings, and then choose if you want this user to be an admin user or you want to have a customized access routine for this user. I'm going to go Custom and select Next. I'm going to allow this user to be just a user that's part of a user group, and I will talk about users in just a second. I will then say that this user has access to both read and write, in other words, access and edit the content of the shared folder, but have read-only access to web files and denied access to the public folder. Then click Next. Then we can choose whether we want this user to have a limited amount of storage utility on the NAS. So if we don't want them to have the ability to overfill the NAS with data and take up all the storage, we can say that we only want this user to have, for example, 100 gigabytes of space. They cannot exceed that, and that is the full amount of access this user has. Then click Next. If you have individual apps installed, they will be listed here, and then you can grant them access, yes or no. We will take a little look about how to install apps at the end of this video. As you can see, there are our values, and we can click Finish, and we would have created our new user, Alan, with his limited amount of storage space and customized access to the overall data on this NAS. From here, we can close, or we can go ahead into local groups. Local groups allow you to create bundles of users that then have one set of rules that apply to all of the users in that group. Great for if you've got younger family members who you only want to have access to maybe multimedia, but you don't want them to have access to a central database. Let's call this group Children. This is also applicable to if you want to have a group for sales team members, warehouse members, accounts, and more. Again, we can say how many users can exist in this group at maximum, or we can go ahead and click Next. We're going to make this group of users to include both Alan and the guest account. Next, we can say that we want this group to have read and write access to the Asustor share, but denied access to anything else. This will overwrite any individual user's groups, so it'll allow you to make sure that you can change large groups of users en masse. And as we can see, we've now moved the guest account and Alan over to this larger group here. And there you go, we've now created multiple users. I've shown you how to share files. We've created a mapped shared drive. We've gone through volumes, RAID creation, software installation, and those hard drives there. In our next video, we're going to talk a lot more about backup and synchronization. There's lots of backup methods built into the Asustor's ADM platform, and we're going to go through NAS to NAS backups, NAS to cloud, NAS to USB, as well as featuring a lot of third-party cloud and SaaS services, software as a service. Alongside that, I will be looking at the App Center, which has a lot of tools open to you that you can install on the NAS at a single click of a button. These applications and services can be installed en masse, as you can see here on screen, depending on the kind of user. So for example, if you're a home or business user, you can go ahead, select both of those, and it will install a bunch of applications all at once, all of them being home or business depending on the ones you choose. But we're going to go into that in a lot more detail on the next video. I'm going to wrap things up now. Thank you so much for watching. Do stay tuned for the next part in this series as it goes live, and we go through backup tools, surveillance tools, multimedia tools, internet tools, and more. So do stay tuned for that. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Click like if you've enjoyed the video, subscribe and click the bell to be notified as the next parts in this series go live, and I go through all of the software and services of the Asustor ADM platform for 2021 and 2022. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.